everyone, and welcome to another Scots Whay podcast. And today I'm joined by filmmaker Darren Hercher. Hello, Darren.
How you doing?
Good. And we're going to talk about your film Dooman, which is going to be on BBC Scotland on the 31st of March, I believe, 10 o'clock, which is next Tuesday. So let's talk a little bit about Dooman, the film, first, before we get into the actual people.
Right. Well, Dooman is an observational documentary about a dew flyer in Greenock. It's about an hour long, and it took me far too long to make.
So the dews, for those who don't know, are the pigeons, aren't they? That's pigeon flyers.
That's right, yeah.
So the film itself, it concentrates on a couple of guys down there, yeah?
Yeah, so basically I set out to make a film. I was asked by the BBC to make a film about dew flyers in the west of Scotland, and I kind of set off with no idea where I was going to go and what kind of film I was going to make, which is kind of where I like to start in the process.
Right.
And I spoke to a few people in the dew world, and I got this sense that Greenock was a bit of a kind of a hotbed for dew action. And I remember watching Sweet 16 a few years ago, Ken Loach film, and I was struck by how beautiful Greenock looked on the screen.
Yeah.
So just on that level, I thought I'm gonna head to Greenock and just check it out.
Yeah, because I've seen the dew huts in Glasgow. From when I was young, I wasn't quite sure what they were. These little buildings, often homemade or always homemade in kind of barren land or spare land or whatever. But you're right about the landscape in the film, because I know Greenock a little bit, but mainly the kind of main street going round to Gourock and all that, but you've got all this beautiful stuff at the back of it. Yeah.
Well, I kind of thought that Greenock would lend itself visually to a film about the dews, because a lot of the time you're standing there looking up at a bird, or on the odd occasion standing on a hill looking down at a bird. So making a film about dews on flat land on some kind of level might not be so visually interesting. So I was just really keen. I just felt the landscape over there would really lend itself to the subject matter, and that's before I met anyone.
Well, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, because there's one shot where one of your protagonists is standing on top of his dew hut, and in the background you've got Inverclyde kind of opening up, and it's quite stunning, because it's a stunning landscape down that way. I'd forgotten that Sweet 16 would film down there.
Yeah.
The one I was thinking of was, there was a play for today called Elephant's Graveyard.
Yeah.
Billy Connolly's in it, and one of the main characters escapes into that landscape at the back. He's supposed to be going to work, but he no longer works. Yeah. And there's an element of that, isn't there, a bit of escape with the dew flyers and what they want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the guys that fly the dews, because I'd met a few of the dew flyers in Glasgow along the canals around Mary Hill, and I'd kind of walk along there fairly regularly and just got chatting to them, and a lot of the guys, didn't work or just seemed to have a lot of time in their hands. And if you fly the dews, it's often quite helpful to have a lot of time in your hands.
Yeah.
Because the dews, it's almost a bit like a full-time job. You know what I mean? The amount of time and energy that you've got to put into looking after them, and then the flying. Yeah. So.
Because it's almost like, for me, having watched the film, it's almost like the dews are members of the family. And ones that need a lot of kind of looking after. There's a lovely scene where a character introduces, is it Daniel, is that the central?
Yeah.
He introduces his daughter to the do's, and it's just like, oh, have you met such and such, and then there's other scenes where someone else's daughter is feeding a sick do, as if you might with a younger child or a younger sibling or something like that. So there's a real kind of, one, I think there's a lot of theme of family in the film in whole, and the pigeons are part of that.
Yeah, the two, like the Dooman in the film is a guy called Daniel.
Yeah.
And for him, the do's is very much about escapism. He flies from a hut on the top of a hill at the back of Greenock, and as far as I know, it's the oldest hut in Greenock. It's been there for I can't remember, but about 50 years or something.
It's passed down from family members, isn't it? I just remember, yes.
Yeah. So that's been there a long time. Daniel lived probably a couple of miles from the hut. So every day he would walk from his flat to the hut, rain, hail or shine, and he'd spend most of the day there, mostly school hours, because he's got some children, and he was a very kind of proactive father at home. Home was quite complicated, so for him, going to the do's and spending time with the do's was very much about not escaping that environment, but just going out somewhere on the side of a hill, and it was on his terms, and he very much loves his pigeons. He's very passionate about it. It's the most important thing in his world, I would say. Yeah. Aside from his family, so he lived and breathed it, and and Daniel also he had some mental health issues. He suffered from manic depression in the past, so the do's for him was very much a leveler. He would go out into the hill, he'd have a lot of time and space to himself. He just seemed to get everything he needed from the do's.
Yeah, because initially I thought, is he kind of avoiding, in inverted commas, real life? But as the film goes on, you think, no, he's not. This is part of his real life. This is just another aspect. It's not like, oh, I'm away out and don't come near me. He wants to share the joy he takes and what he does with the people that he cares about as well. Yeah,
I think increasingly Daniel kind of shared his interest in the do's. He really enjoyed the process of making the film.
Right.
One of his motivations for making the film was to kind of tell the world about the do's.
Yeah.
So it was, when I first encountered Daniel, it was very much he was up there alone with the do's, and then interacting with the other do flyers, but his family life was very separate.
Oh, that's interesting.
But over the course of the year and a half that I was filming with Daniel, his children would come up more often, spend time with the do's, and he was sharing his passion with his daughter in particular.
Yeah.
He was trying over the course of my filming period to almost get to know her a little bit better, and vice versa. By taking his daughter up to the Duke, it was almost a way for her to get to know him. Yeah,
absolutely. There's scenes where it starts right at the beginning where there's a language which kind of threw me a little bit. It's not like words, it's noises. It's trying to replicate what the do's speak to each other. Is that right?
Kind of. The guys very much try to get into the mindset of a pigeon.
Yes.
Which is kind of harder than maybe it might seem. They would if you listen to a Dooman, it would take a lifetime to understand how a pigeon thinks.
I was just wondering how they were going to subtitle the noise when it imitates pigeon. Or
it's really funny actually. I saw a trailer yesterday that the BBC had created, and they tried to subtitle the various noises and things, and it was. I think it'll be quite funny.
But the reason I ask that question is because in that way it makes sense that originally he kind of kept it to himself or just with the other flyers, because they might think no one else was interested, but maybe because you've shown an interest, then he maybe thought, oh, maybe my family would be interested in this. I think that's a possible thing that he maybe never considered before, that would anyone be interested in what I do or my birds.
I think traditionally it's very much a working class male pastime. All these guys genuinely will go out and talk about nothing but pigeons and do flying 10 hours on the hill solid, and it's all about the do's. So maybe there is an element of feeling that it's their world, and maybe others wouldn't understand it, particularly women. There's not many women that fly the doos. There are a few.
Right.
But I think that's what makes Stuart quite interesting, who's Daniel's rival.
Right.
Because I was attracted to their rivalry for lots of reasons. One was the kind of setting.
Yeah.
The beautiful setting where you've got a duke on the top of the hill and another at the bottom of the hill, and they're literally they're at constant war with each other, which is kind of hilarious.
It's such a brilliant setting because they're close enough that they can shout abuse or shout stuff at each other, and then you've got Daniel almost like king of the hill. Yeah. Like I was here, or my Duke was here first, type of thing, and it is hilarious. It is genuinely funny.
Yeah, if there wasn't an animation called King of the Hill, that was going to be the name of the documentary. But unfortunately, the title was taken. So I was interested on that level, but also Stuart is a single father.
Yeah.
So it's just Stuart. And he has a daughter, Jodie, young girl, who was, when I started filming, she was 11. And Jodie has a genuine interest in the doos.
Yeah.
And Stuart would breed doos at home, and so he'd take his interest in the doos back into his flat. Like a lot of these guys, very much lived and breathed it as well. But Stuart kind of was taking it a little bit further, and Jodie, she'd want to go to the hut, and want to hang out with Stuart, and want to learn, and it was just so lovely to kind of witness that, a father-daughter relationship, really strong. I felt in an interest like the doos, which when I went into it was I'd been told was very male dominated. I felt very lucky to discover a situation where there was a young girl, who was just as passionate as any of the guys, and it was a really lovely insight into the dynamics of their relationship as well. So. Whereas Daniel, was very much the kind of, when I first went into that environment, he was the guy standing up on top of the hill, kind of quite isolated, and wanted a separation between his personal life and his doo flying. at the bottom of the hill was Stuart and Jodie, who were very much sharing.
Yeah.
And I think at some level, maybe Daniel observed that and thought, particularly when his daughter came into the situation, he thought he could share his interest in the do's also, for reasons that we discussed earlier. You know, that maybe it was a way of her getting to know him and him getting to know her.
Because there is a genuine interest there, and he's genuinely proud to show her. And there's a lovely scene where the two daughters sing a song from Hamilton, which is so unexpected. And that's the thing, there's lots of unexpected moments in it. If someone had said to me, there's a film being made about do flyers in Inverclyde, and you've kind of got an idea of what it's going to be, which is what the premise you set out at the beginning, but there are so many unexpected moments in it. I presume when you're making a film like this, these are the things that always surprise you.
Yeah, you know, naturally when you well, everybody makes films differently, but
Sure.
what I try to do is, you know, one will have preconceptions of, you know, the world that you're stepping into and everything else. I, as much as possible, try to do everything which challenges those preconceptions. So I'll maybe look for unlikely characters.
Yeah.
Just something that feels exciting for me. You know, something that's maybe not cliched or expected, and obvious. You know, and what I like to do with my films is just spend a lot of time with my characters. You know, my formula changes every time. Sometimes,
okay.
Sometimes you know, I'll meet someone very quickly and start filming very quickly, which actually happened on this occasion. And then other times I'll meet a contributor and spend several months with them before I start filming. So, you know, every situation is different.
But it's the style, I don't want to say style, but you're never on screen. You're actually rarely heard. There's not a lot of you, there's a few questions and that's it. Is that something that you always try to do to make sure that the focus is on the people that you're interested in?
Yeah, what I try to do, you know, it's very much an observational kind of approach.
Yeah.
I'm obviously very passionate about documentary, but I'm even more excited about drama.
Right.
And what I try to do is, you know, I spend enough time with my contributors over a period of time where, you know, we kind of work out some rules of engagement,
sure,
as it were.
Sure, yeah.
You know, when I turn up, I don't want them to say anything they wouldn't normally say. I like silence. I don't want people to fill, you know, a quiet moment, which is really difficult. You know, I suppose if you were directing some actors, a lot of actors would possibly overact because they feel they've got to do something. I think the same applies to documentary,
right.
Because you know, if somebody's pointing a camera at you, you kind of feel like you need to do something more.
Yeah.
So as much as possible from the beginning, I say to them, no, I don't want you to, you know, to kind of do anything. You know, I am in the room with a camera pointing at you, and I will ask you questions every now and then, but I just like things to kind of evolve at a natural pace in terms of storylines. You know, as much as possible. Again, I'll try to get the information that's on the screen contained within the action, the pictures, and what people are saying, and that's really difficult. So in order to get to that point, I think there's no shortcut other than getting to know your contributors really, really well, allowing them to get to know you really, really well, and build up a relationship of trust. Sure. And hopefully you get to a point where you can be in their world, and you can observe and capture it, and when you're really lucky, you capture something that means something.
There's a great moment where because part of the do flying is to capture other birds, and where Daniel captures a bird and he just turns around and says, "I hope you got that in camera." It's fabulous, because it's the only time really that you're kind of directly referenced that you're even there. And I think when you're watching something, that's fascinating, because you become unaware of that. Yeah, there is someone with a camera, even as a viewer, as well as because they're not playing up to the camera in any way.
That was hilarious, because that was a big moment, and there's a lot of luck involved with filmmaking. I feel, and that was a really good example of it, because I was filming for about a year and a half with the two guys in Greenock, and the reason I was filming for so long was because during the first year, I didn't realise this, but there's effectively a shutdown in the pigeon season where the doos go into a moult, so they shed all their feathers. And when I first encountered the guys, started filming, and everything felt good, two good characters, really good, good setup, visually, it was all there. But the one thing that was missing was that nobody was catching birds. So I spent literally about 3 or 4 months filming just birds in the sky, and nobody was catching anything, and I was just starting to get really worried. I was thinking, damn, I'm going to be making a film about do flying, where the whole point is to catch someone else's birds, and nobody's catching anything, so it's not very exciting. And then we were approaching the moult, where they were effectively the birds were going to be grounded for a few months. So I was kind of really concerned. So anyway, I was really lucky. The luck comes in because, and this always amazes me when I'm filming. This combination of being there at the right time and with the right characters and the right conditions, the light and the flying. And Daniel had gone through the whole summer. He hadn't caught a bird, but he'd lost loads. Yeah,
that was quite stunning when he put a number on it. I won't spoil it, folks. But
yeah. So, I was a little bit uncomfortable with, this idea that I was going to be presenting Daniel as, as a kind of prolific loser, Yeah. Because I was really kind of rooting for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I really, really wanted to see him catch a bird. So anyway, on this particular day, it was a day where you don't usually catch birds. You fly birds by pairs,
right?
Because effectively over the course of a week with doos, you'll fly them at the weekend, odd, which means that the birds will go out solo,
right?
And they're sex starved, and that increases the chances of captures. But during the week, you put the birds with their partners, and you'll fly them together. So it's a way to get them on the wing,
Okay.
And, exercise, and allow the birds to kind of to tread and mate and stuff, and then you'll separate them again, and then they'll get all, sexually frustrated, and then you fly them at the weekend. So this was like a Tuesday. There was nothing happening, and they were flying pairs, and anyway, I won't spoil it for anyone, but this kind of situation developed, and very, very quickly Daniel managed to catch himself a bird, and I just happened to be on the hill on that particular morning. We're not, I was probably in two minds as to whether I'd go B, in the right spot to get it,
absolutely, C,
I was recording, and D, it was sharp, and E, the sound worked. Do you know what I mean? There's lots of levels where
things. Sure,
it might not have worked for me, and something that was really, really important. If I didn't manage to get that, that's the only, I went into the next season because I had to, because I didn't have enough material, but that was the only bird he caught that summer.
The talking about the sound, you say you don't want to fill silences, and there's lots of lovely sections where perhaps it's just Daniel sitting in his chair and you hear the sounds of nature and nothing else, and maybe a little bit of noise in the background, whatever, it's very natural. But there's also kind of choral singing on the soundtrack too. So where does that come from for a start?
With the soundtrack, it's the soundtrack's something that I always find really challenging to find the right music for film, because I don't want to impose music on a film that doesn't kind of just work. The kind of subject matter and the aesthetic of the film, and I was quite keen not to have any music, because in the past I've had films with a lot of music, and then I've had films with no music. Right. So it's whatever a particular film demands.
Sure.
I kind of feel like the films ultimately tell me, or kind of guide me to make the right decisions. And I ended up going with some really beautiful choral music from the Glasgow Madrigals for a couple of reasons. The first is that my partner is in the choir.
So you had access?
Yeah, so I'd been along to a couple of their shows, and I was like, mental note, this is really lovely, beautiful music. And I've got somebody that knows them, is in them. So,
and it works a treat. I mean, it when it comes in, it really is quite striking.
Yeah. The other reason was it's this whole idea of making a film that challenges what you might perceive to be the film you're just about to watch. A film about the Doos, a very male-dominated world, and I wanted to challenge that, in the sense that we discussed that there's some daughters that are very prominent in the film, and Daniel's favourite pigeon, his love interest in a sense is one of his hens, So there's a very strong kind of female kind of presence,
absolutely,
throughout the film. So I felt I wanted to use the female choir because it would just add another expected layer to the film. Obviously I wanted to, if you're going to have music, you hope that the music will elevate the film to something it wasn't before. So I played the film without music, with the sound of nature, and which is really important in that environment, and it works perfectly fine. And but I also felt using the female choir would give me something just a little bit. I just felt the music would add another dimension to the film, and to be perfectly honest, there's a pressure when you make films for television, to constantly keep your viewer kind of interested and engaged. The majority of my films have been for a television audience, but I've done my best again to try and make films that kind of challenge that.
Right.
So kind of, I love slow cinema, and and lots of space in my films, and I seem to have gotten away with quite a lot over the years. But without doubt, there is a compromise.
Yeah, of course.
There is one, and when I'm in the edit, I'll have viewings with commissioners, where it's not a battle, but there's definitely a kind of a middle ground that we try and reach. I'll make my kind of art house film. In the first half of the edit, they'll come in and and kind of watch the film through the kind of the gaps in their fingers
and say, can we get some modern music on this or something?
Yeah, and can somebody say something? and then it's just about finding a middle ground, between what they feel is a film that they can screen on BBC Scotland and something that I'm happy with.
But I think what that does when people there's a lot of silence when things are said, they often have greater meaning, they certainly are given greater meaning, because it's not just a narrative or anything like that. And Daniel says at one point, they all get captured eventually, talking about the birds, but that seemed to have so many layers of meaning. There was a real philosophical aspect to not just him, I think, but a lot of the people involved. This idea, almost a Zen thing, that we no one's going to eventually win or lose, even though it's competitive. So competitive at times that they start to annoy each other. But that just stuck with me, that they all get captured eventually.
Yeah, well, what I was kind of hoping to do with Daniel's story in particular, just to go back to his kind of home life.
Sure.
He from a previous marriage has a couple of daughters who live in England.
Mm-hmm.
And grew up in Care. And he has a couple of sons with his present partner.
Yeah.
In Greenock. And over the course of the filming, duration, which is another reason why I kept filming, just to kind of have a conclusion to that
Sure.
story.
Uh-huh.
His youngest daughter, Kira, was thinking about moving up to Greenock, and it was a fascinating set of circumstances for me to observe, because Kira and her sister Shona, two really bright young women who had obviously had a difficult childhood, but on the surface had come through it incredibly well, and they were really close, and
Yeah.
it was lovely to observe them together, really looked out for each other. But obviously in some kind of level, Kira wanted to move up to Greenock to be with her father and to be with her her father's new family, and so throughout the course of the film, she had to make a very difficult decision. Do I stay with my sister down south, or do I come up north? So I felt there was a kind of a parallel to do flying. This idea that using Daniel's favourite bird as an example, the queen of the hill, he called her. every time he flew the Queen, there was a chance that he could lose her.
Yeah.
That she could just fly off and never come back. But you know, in order to fully appreciate the joy of flying the Doos, you have to negotiate the risk of losing your favourite bird, and I felt with Kira's story, I'm not going to say how it goes, but there was an element of whether Kira was going to stay with Daniel or fly away, you know. So on a philosophical level, you know, it's storytelling.
Yeah.
So when you're filming these things, you know, it's pure documentary, you know, in the sense that it's not scripted. You know, I just try and capture what happens, and then you know, you just kind of put your faith in the process. But when you step into the edit, you've got all these different story elements, and naturally you try and put them together in such a way where, you know, kind of it's meaningful.
Well, I think that's the perfect place to leave it, Dan. It's on Dooman on BBC Scotland 31st of March, which is a Tuesday at 10 p.m, and I think it's a fascinating and beautiful film. So everybody should definitely tune in for that. Cheers.
Thank you.
And we'll be back soon with someone completely different. Cheers.